We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Wednesday night, August 7th, 2024, as we record this new episode. The Chicago White Sox losing streak reached 21 games, tying the American League record, but they finally won on Tuesday night and looked to be in the driver's seat on Wednesday afternoon, leading 2-0, going into the seventh inning for their first road series win since May. You could probably guess what happened next. Another blown lead late, and the White Sox ended up losing 3-2. So they have lost 22 of their last 23 games. And now the all-time franchise record is only one game above 500 as the Chicago White Sox return home for a 2-game series against the Chicago Cubs and then 3 games against the New York Yankees. We'll recap what happened in Oakland, look ahead to the weekend, and a TV show idea for the White Sox. So let's get started. Joining me are Sox Machine beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. Gentlemen, hello, and thank you for recording me on this fine Wednesday night. Usually we record on Thursdays, podcast listeners, but I am calling bingo for the first time at the Remova Theater. So if you're in Bridgeport, you got nothing to do Thursday night. Bingo starts at 8 o'clock. You can hear me call bingo. Gentlemen, are you guys bingo experts? Do you have any advice for me calling bingo?
No. I haven't played bingo since I think like grade school or something like that. Okay. I forget exactly what the concept is, what it's about, how it works.
Are you a bingo player, James?
I know they call numbers, but that's about it.
No, I'm not a bingo player, despite feeling middle-aged and other like life habits. That one hasn't caught on yet. I think like my general advice is either like don't be irredeemably corrupt or like go all in. Don't like kind of half it. Like either the game is like sold to the highest bidder or it's like the cleanest game in town. I think you have to pick one lane or the other.
Well, it's Bridgeport, so I think I'm gonna have to go the corrupt way. It'd be a great way to make some side cash. It's rigging the bingo. But yes, again, you guys, if you want, again, it starts at 8 o'clock at the Remova Theater in Chicago off of Halstead, close to 35th and Halstead, just a few blocks away from Guarantee Rate Field.
How did Sox Machine come from a humble independent startup to every like James stays at 4 seasons in every city now? What's going on?
It's thanks to our wonderful Patreon support.
Wink.
Oh, what a money laundering scheme that would be. Haven't figured that one out. We can leave it on the whiteboard for next year. Talking about the White Sox, which is not always a fun topic, but they finally won a game, Jim, and they kind of coasted to that win, winning 5-1. Jonathan Cannon was very good. Davis Martin was very good as well. Both of them pitched well against the Athletics. but they lose another series. And as you wrote in the recap, they have one road series win all the way back in May against St. Louis. And it's becoming more unbelievable. Like looking at the MLB standings, there's a good chance that this White Sox team reaches their 90th loss before they earn their 30th win for the season. And even though the losing streak has snapped, this is still a pretty ugly sight that we may never see again for those that cover the White Sox and are White Sox fans.
It feels very glitch in the simulation to have like a 2 and a 9 in the win and loss column. It's almost like when I look at the minor league box scores every day and I look at pitcher game logs and I look at their strikes and pitches thrown, and usually it's like 5 and 8. And I get used to that. When it's like 4 and 8, you're like, yeah. And when it's 6 and 8, you're like, all right. And then, which is very rare. But then you have those like disaster outings where somebody walks, 7 batters and 2 in some innings, and you see like, 33 of 80 pitches or strikes. You think like, what was that like to watch? And then I kind of apply that to a 29 and 90 record, thinking like they would have pulled the plug on that by then. Like Major League Baseball would have said like, let's get them out of here. They are clearly not Major League ready. This is just embarrassing him at this point. And they would go to a bullpen game from there. So like, I imagine if Rob Manfred could, it's like, you're kind of corrupting the standings here, just existing right now. The Royals Twins get to play you 13 times. Other teams only 6 or 7. That's fundamentally unfair to the system. Like there's too much money riding on this. Sit the rest of the season out. That's kind of how it feels when you look at 2 and 9 in the win and loss column.
James, you're more into the NBA than I am. And last year in the NBA, you had both the Washington Wizards and the Detroit Pistons had awful seasons. Both teams won 15 or fewer games, winning percentages starting in the hundreds. Were those seasons worse if you're trying to compare an apple to an orange here than what we are seeing with the White Sox? Like, was that believable for the Wizards and Pistons to be that bad, where we kind of feel like this is unbelievable that the White Sox are just this bad?
I think this is worse. For one, I think there's more historical precedent for teams as bad as the Pistons were. I do think they evoked a similar, like during their worst stretch watching the Pistons, and I had League Pass and a morbid curiosity. So I watched a strange amount of like the end of Pistons games last season, and just the general feeling like they lack like the ability to win the game. Like there's too many areas where they're just fundamentally compromised for them to overcome. Like there's too much a firewall for like simply things to flip their way. Like 9 things have to go their way to win a game. And it just kind of feels statistically impossible at a certain point. And I feel like watching the White Sox offense, like how struggle it is to scratch across runs or how difficult it is for the bullpen to hold any lead. It's just like walking on like a tightrope and then hopping off to another tightrope at like that's on fire like halfway through type of too many things have to break right for this to go on. But certainly with the Pistons, like there's much more like adamant, like they're clearly they don't intend to win games. It's not really in their franchise direction's bigger interest to win games. And maybe that's something you see in terms of load management, whereas the White Sox have no incentive. They certainly, like, obviously they traded away a lot of pieces and made their team worse, but they're certainly much more in a position where like this is just what they are and they're just bad. And I think they're really tracking poorly to maybe set an all-time record for losses, whereas there's been other horrific, awful tanking teams with none of their future pieces healthy, like the Pistons before. Because like in basketball, you lose like 1 or 2 like star players, and you like legitimately don't have like the horses to win on a given night, like when they have Kate Cunningham at. Also, like basketball is, it's so many possessions. Like the larger trends of like how good you're shooting or what you're doing defensively or how many rebounds you got, like they kind of bear out over time. Whereas like baseball, like can swing more on like a smaller set of discrete moments. And so for the White Sox to lose 20 times in a row, I think takes a lot more, I don't want to say incompetence, but that's usually the word I get back to. Just kind of systemic failure all over the course of the game to ensure that this never breaks in your favor 21 times, I think is more striking than doing it in basketball.
Yeah, I keep coming back to the word losers when it comes to the White Sox, which feels like mean, but it's also just like true. They're great at losing. They're, yeah, I think I said to my wife, like trying to explain it, they're just incredible losers. And it's not meant to be derogatory. It just meant that whenever there's an opportunity to lose a game, it seems like they find it and they choose it like a bunch of different ways. Like even, she went to bed last night before the game and told me one like, oh, that's something. And then she came home as they're failing to win this afternoon and saying like, yeah, it's 2 games in a row where they got quality 6 inning starts, or better than quality starts by the baseball definition. And seems pretty simple. One game, it looked as simple as it should be against a team like Oakland. Another game, just another mess. So like 2 games in a row, which most teams are able to do to win a series, they cannot. So I think when you go, what is this, 4.5 months with winning one road series all season, like it's losing, and they're very, very good at it.
They're 11-49 on the road this season. I didn't look it up research wise, but for the podcast listeners, for those that are in the Sox Machine comments, we should look up to see what's the worst road record in franchise history, and have the White Sox already clinched it. Because last year they were pretty even. They had 31 home wins and 30 road wins last year. And they can't even get to 30, I think, now for the rest of the season, if I'm mathing correctly. So they're 11-49. That's 60. So they got 21 more road games. I guess they can. Yes, they just have to win 19 of their next 21 road games to match their road win total next year. I'm not going to bet for that for the White Sox. Yeah, it'd be something though if they did go on that hot of a stretch on the road all of a sudden to shock us. Be quite the regression back to the mean. When it comes to just like, we haven't had a chance to break down in-game moments. And James, I have a question about Touki Toussaint. We've seen Touki take on multiple roles with the White Sox, and I think he's best if you just leave him in a game and have him go 2, 3, maybe 4 innings as like your long reliever. So when he came into the game with a 2-0 lead in the 7th inning, there's a part of me that's like, let Touki try to carry this the rest of the way. Like we saw with Jonathan Cannon when Cannon got a 3-inning save. Instead, he had a couple of base runners on, and Pedro Grifol swapped out Toussaint with Dominic Leone, who just came off the injured list. But Leone pitched in the night before, so he's coming off the injured list and now pitching back-to-back days. And ta-da, guess what happened? Lots of weak contact, finding the grass, getting through the infield, and all of a sudden the White Sox are losing 3-2. So I guess my question is, like with Toussaint and how this makeshift bullpen works the rest of the season, like what is his role, James?
Kind of floats around. Pedro definitely talked about using him in multi-innings in the future. I think you'd probably easily see him in a multi-inning game, like pitching behind Garrett Crochet, or they got their doors blown off and he's taking the game to the finish. I think that's multi-inning. Maybe if he comes in the 6th and looks really good, he could pitch the 7th at the right situation. He actually said today, like he had literally had 3 people ready for the 7th inning. So clearly there wasn't a ton of trust. I think probably the way Touki produces the most value right now, you could see it as like the ability to be stretched out and give you multiple innings. At the same time, like in a 2-run game in decently high leverage, you also know Tuki's a guy who can like lose the zone and put 3 guys on base really quickly. So I get having someone behind him. And I also get the idea that like they just don't have many leverage relievers. Like in terms of like high leverage experience, like Dominic Leone's like the pinnacle of experience that they have in that bullpen. Like he's as trusted as anybody. I definitely do not expect him to pitch back-to-back days right after like spending 3 months on the IL, or 2.5. But he did look really good the night before, and threw very few pitches. So I get why he was maybe a mid-inning choice and maybe not like a start of the inning choice. I thought he looked like fine. He was throwing like 95, 96. He wasn't getting like crushed except for the sac fly. I wouldn't be surprised if he quickly kind of shoots up the leverage ladder. I think in general with the way like their bullpen's composed, it's going to be a lot of like throwing things at the wall and seeing how it sticks. And like in that vein, not to like get overexcited about like the one win we've seen in 4 weeks, but like seems like Chad Kuhl should just like face righties in single innings, just throw a ton of sliders. Like it seems like that was a lot easier for him than let's try to piece 5 innings together on like, then you started warming up like 5 minutes ago or whatever kind of his role was. Like I'd certainly sign up to see how that looked again. They'll probably blow up at some point, but it looked interesting. And they don't have any candidates to take over type of like single inning or relief roles. It's a lot of just like hoping John Brebbia finds it again for another 6 weeks, and that there's been ups and downs with that.
Yeah, and Steven Wilson, yeah, it's tough for the White Sox. It's tough for Grifol or anyone who's going to be managing this team for the rest of the season, trying to wade through those leverage waters late into games. But we haven't had a chance to talk about in-game decision making in a while on the podcast. That was just a decision that caught my attention in today's loss. Something that is keeping my attention is Brooks Baldwin and Miguel Vargas, especially when they're playing the left side of the infield, Jim. And you've seen Baldwin more than I certainly have in person. Do you think Baldwin plays good enough defense to be a Major League Baseball shortstop?
I think he's a better shortstop than a second baseman. Like when he came up and was playing second base opposite Nicky Lopez, I thought that was a little bit curious. Like maybe when it comes to a rookie playing shortstop and being plugged in, maybe they feel that's too many responsibilities, too many calls. As we've seen the White Sox screw up double steals, how to field them. Perhaps they want to try to keep things simple and go with their most experienced defender who understands the deal at short and have Baldwin come in at second. But watching him on both sides of the of second base with Birmingham, with Winston-Salem before that, second base just seemed like he didn't quite have the angles, especially if he was drawn in or playing some kind of unusual alignment. Seemed like he would, play things off to the side or wasn't quite, as sharp as it was going to the hole as a shortstop, playing up the middle. Maybe it's, just a unlucky sample of batted balls to where like a lefty hooked one really hard that maybe he didn't get that similar contact when he played short. But that just kind of jumped out to me, was that his reactions were a lot more natural on the left side of the field. So seeing him play short recently, I'm fine with it. Like I'd like to see him do it more. He certainly has the reputation of somebody who knows where he's supposed to be and understands the assignment. So you'd hope that that would translate. Maybe the rookie mistake here and there, but I mean, Lopez and Paul DeYoung were making rookie mistakes on at least every series. So certainly in a season like this, a rookie like Baldwin can be afforded some grace. Should they, whether it comes to leadership or whatever, officially turn the page on the season and say we are in development mode, I would hope that would get a lot of Baldwin at shortstop, because you have your Willy Adames fantasies at short next year and the White Sox spending big. But if they don't, like Baldwin might be the natural first one in line unless any interesting trades arise or any free agent shortstops shake loose or become good values. It would seem like Baldwin would be the first in line.
Yeah, Baldwin so far, 18 games for the White Sox, 15 games at second base, 3 games at shortstop. I'm with you, Jim. That's why I want to see more games from Baldwin at shortstop, because when he made those starts at shortstop, I was a bit surprised and a little taken back, like, okay, they're going to challenge him at short. But I see the things that you were mentioning, especially the athleticism and some of the plays that he's making at short. We're like, oh, this could be a legitimate option for the White Sox with Baldwin at shortstop. Hitting wise, he's got some work to do still. He struggled a little bit in this series against the A's. He went 2 for 11. Those 2 hits were in the White Sox win. And so far he's batting .206 with a .242 on base percentage and slugging .317. So he needs more work on the offensive side, or at least get more at bats and we see more production. But James, I am on your bandwagon now when it comes to Miguel Vargas, that I think Vargas should just play one defensive position. Is that third base? Is that the position that he's going to be best at?
It would seem like it, since he's kind of dinged as like not like he's a good runner. He's not unathletic, but he's not necessarily like this super quick twitch guy, and not seemingly just not extra graceful on defense, from what we've seen. It seems like it would, if you're going to, especially if you're moving around, third base feels like it would have less, I think it kind of clicked for Moncada because it had less movement and shifting responsibilities, or covering the bag and moving back and forth based on like where the ball is going. So I would think it would be an easier transition for Vargas. And I've liked some plays, especially in the Oakland series that he made. I think like definitely heard a lot of like he's moved so much because he doesn't have a position. But I feel like left field looked a lot rougher than he has in the infield generally. I know there's probably going to be some tough moments mixed in here early, but it seems like in the dirt, kind of quick reaction. Definitely has a throwing arm for it. That seems like we're going to be the smoother transition. It's just like, okay, I think Vargas is clearly, I think someone at the front office is viewing like giving multiple years the click. If they're, his bat is supposed to be the headline of that entire trade. That, not that Brian Ramos is necessarily putting up numbers, though I think he homered again tonight, that immediately merit it, but that is one of your more near ready pieces and of a system that's kind of light on bats. So you kind of wonder what it impacts him. I think it's probably too soon for the team to really like worry about that problem in some major way. Like if Ramos hits his way back in the picture, that's like a kind of, good problem to have. And, he actually like a good somebody overqualified to defend first base. Wouldn't be like the worst thing that's ever happened to the White Sox organization. And talking to Paul Giannis today, like they're really kind of still waiting to see maybe more approach gains with Ramos. So I don't think that they feel like that's an imminent thing that he's going to take back hold of that position and never give it up before like the end of the season or something like that. So you definitely have a window to give Vargas like a long look here, and who you might never see Yoan Moncada again. So it's not like something you should really worry about, like that seat, keeping that warm for him or anything like that. I'm fine with it now. I just wonder, do they view that as coexisting with Ramos long term? Do they view it as Ramos or Vargas is going to move around if they need him to again? And is that really suited for him? Or it's just like, hey, we got more third basemen than we need. Let's not worry about it right away.
Yeah, because I guess from my perspective, Jim, when it comes to Vargas, like I understand that like he's like playing a game in the field and then he's DHing. Like they want him to get at bats, and Vargas is not exactly hitting the ground running with the White Sox. He's 3 for 30 since he's joined the White Sox. That's a batting average of 100, folks, for those that are math challenged. But with Vargas, like you got to find some defensive ability, because if he's just going to be a full-time DH, man, that Fetty trade's not going to look any better if the headliners is just a DH only type of guy. Like if you need to find a defensive home for Vargas, I would just like Vargas to be, you're at third, Baldwin, you're at short, Montgomery and Ramos, take your time in AAA. You guys are going to play out the rest of the season there because of the struggles that you've had. And let's use the remaining games of this season to see if Baldwin and Vargas can convince the front office, Chris Getz, that maybe this is how we start 2025 on the left side of the infield with Baldwin at short and Vargas at third.
Especially since he hasn't played the position so poorly that you think like this is not worth a commitment, like he did in left field. The first looks in left field were not good, and with the Dodgers, they were not good. So there is some reason to believe that this is not worth the time commitment right now. It might be worth like spring training, maybe doing it there. But in terms of in season, transplanting him from one organization to another and wanting to see something in terms of a future at the plate, at the very least, that it does make sense to simplify it. If he's comfortable at third base and he's not putting anybody in harm's way with, his fielding, communication, throws, etc., and he's playing like a decent, even like slightly below average, or just not laughably below average, I think would be enough to clear the bar this year, to where you can't blame any kind of offensive struggles on, well, we made things way too complicated. elsewhere on the field, not knowing where he's going to be in the lineup, not knowing where he's going to be in the field, not knowing which glove to bring out. And I think that's what you want to avoid. So yeah, I'm on Vargas playing third base. And if he does happen to play third base, like I think Ramos is somebody who, whether it's a case of trading him because you can maybe do a need for need trade elsewhere, or like, I think Ramos is fast enough to maybe be somebody who might be worth looking at in the outfield. Maybe it goes as well as Vargas has, but in terms of like foot speed, seems like it's fine. He's got the arm strength. So more of a matter of like what his routes look like. And, it's one possible case. If Vargas does look like he takes some kind of ownership before the end of the year, there might be a way to move Ramos around.
Yeah, I guess I don't need to see Nicky Lopez a lot for the remaining of this season. He had his run and it worked poorly for both Lopez and the White Sox. We're just at a stage of just trying to find answers, especially in the position player side. So that's why I kind of feel strongly like moving forward, just maybe in pen, just have Baldwin at short and Vargas in third. And if they struggle, they struggle. I mean, you're not really playing for much anymore. Again, you're 28 and 89. So I don't see where it hurts right now. And I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. When rosters expand in September, it's just 28 players, right?
Right.
So that's one position player and one pitcher. Probably the White Sox are going to have in September.
Yeah. I mean, though, like a counter argument to all this is that like second base is pretty wide open organizationally. Like all hail Haral Perez. I'm sure he'll take rule over as a benevolent king for 15 years. But that's little years away. Jacob Gonzalez is obviously not looking like on the fast track right now because he's struggling in Double-A. As well, much as like Baldwin like objectively looks better at shortstop, like the idea that he could just take second base and run with it and no one was really coming very soon to like take it from him does give it a little bit of appeal over like stopgap shortstop before Colson Montgomery comes, or it's easier to see him kind of taking second base where they haven't like committed back-to-back first-round picks to that spot, and not really having it holding off all challengers, at least again until the Raul Perez reign. But
obviously,
I think it benefits Baldwin to have some flexibility.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think Lopez. I would like to see Baldwin play short more than Lopez. I think there's value in having Lopez in the infield. Like there is nobody at second base. So if Lopez plays second, perhaps he fills the role of like Elvis Andrus of just being the guy who knows what's going on, when so few players didn't, and getting a lot of, credibility for just, he knows how to, guide infielders around and double checks their positioning and knows when to take a strategic mound visit or not mound visit, like Andrews did, once in a while. There's value to that. I think when you have a brand new left side of the infield, to have somebody who can say like, yeah, you're playing it wrong, or you're positioned wrong, or not with one out, we don't play there, that sort of thing, because there probably will be, especially if perhaps Vargas being somebody who bounces between the outfield and infield, like his positioning or his intuitive knowledge of situations, especially with the new organization, might need some on-field direction that Baldwin might not be able to provide, because he does have his plate full of just making sure he's in the right place himself. So I do think Lopez has a role over the last month and a half of just playing good defense, and he's somebody whose defense is better at second base as well. That it kind of makes sense to have him there more. But if Baldwin is not looking great at shorts or not looking like a fixture, then it does make sense to not just keep putting Baldwin in the he has to play short bucket. I think it's more of a case of him just being the traditional utility infielder, being a Danny Mendick for a new generation.
Did you know that Nicky Lopez is a 360 OBP since the All-Star break? I
did not know that.
I talked to him about it. Like he's kind of been hitting quietly better for the last month and a half, and he's on path where you could realistically like I think his career like WRC plus is 73 and now he's up to 72. He's going to like shake out to be kind of like the hitter we expected, but it was loaded in such a way that like no one cares. Where it's like having a good second half as like a veteran player on a rebuilding team that's looking past him. Like he's going to wind up delivering like what was promised, but it's like by the time he's hitting well, it's like, get him out of here. Why are we playing this guy anymore? But he from his view is like, I'm having a normal season. Like I knew it was a long year and I knew it was gonna like break my way again. And he's kind of become Nicky Lopez again.
Yeah, the 5 for 11 in stolen bases is the bigger problem with like Nicky Lopez being more than a bench infielder. Like when he was his heights in 2021 where he went 22 for 23, that's kind of just him maximizing his profile. Whereas when he doesn't provide those steals and there's not a whole lot else besides, decent batting eye, that just, maybe isn't appreciated enough because pitchers challenge him because they have no reason to fear him, like really, like turning on a fastball and sending it 10 rows deep.
When it comes to second base, is Lenin Sosa out of the question? I know he starts at third base. They're moving him around the infield still. There's still White Sox fans that like Lenin Sosa. Do we ever come up with a nickname for them?
I like Lennonites.
Lennonites.
It feels, yeah. Yeah, I think with Sosa, it feels like his play at second. That's the kind of like play at second base that I'm watching for from Vargas at third is just the mistake every game. The letting your pitcher down, because I think that's another argument for Lopez, or another argument for like having some veteran infielders is like, you still have to develop pitchers. You still need Cannon, who doesn't strike out a ton of guys, to get some kind of measure of support in the field. And like Martin, when he's throwing well, that the plays are made behind him. So when Moncada was a better bet to play, like, and people wondered what's the point if his option's going to be declined after the season. I thought, well, defense, when you have young pitchers, having Moncada at third and Lopez at second, just that makes a pretty big difference for a ground baller or somebody who needs a double play turned, to have that kind of support. And if you had like Vargas and Sosa at third and second instead, like that could be a case of a lot of 5-out innings that pitchers don't recover from. But I think Sosa's play at second, not quite a disqualifier, but kind of close when you have so many other projects in the infield that you can't really babysit it. So that's why I think he's in a little bit of an odd spot. I think his job is to play well enough that another team says, yeah, I'd be interested in that kind of player. Like, maybe just a small deal, again, need for need, blocked player for blocked player, to where just somebody the White Sox are vaguely interested comes over and they have a little bit more time and space to audition them.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday, and you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with multi-view, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action. Make your Sundays more magical. And also, YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
I just think organizational trust of Sosa is just not high, and
Yeah. Okay.
have to kind of bash his way out of above that at every turn. And as much as we've all seen him like have stretches where it looks like he's doing it, he's sitting at like a 61 WRC plus right now. So
Yeah.
his approach seems like it's not durable enough to outrun the their general interest in playing other people.
I guess I want the White Sox to use rest of August and September to know for certain if third base is Vargas's best defensive position. And if it is, okay, that could help with planning for 2025. If he's also awful at third base like he is in the outfield, then congratulations, you probably just traded for a full-time DH for Eric Fetty. And Baldwin, if he could stick at shortstop in the majors, I would like to see this combination in the left side of the infield for like a week at least upcoming for the White Sox and see if this sticks for them. And again, all we're looking for is answers and like how the White Sox are to turn this around. And if Baldwin and Vargas could challenge Colson Montgomery and Brian Ramos, that's good. I view that as a good thing because both of those prospects need to step up their play. Because come September, when they expand rosters, I think that extra position player is Edgar Caro because he's deserved it. And he continues to rake in AAA. Edgar Caro is the White Sox minor leaguer of the year.
Yeah, him or Noah Schultz. And I think if you value playing time and workload that approximates a major leaguer's workload, then I think Caro would be the pick.
Yeah. And I would run with Lee and Caro in September, with Caro getting some starts and getting used to catching major league games and facing major league pitching. He's deserved it over Colson Montgomery and Brian Ramos. I like this idea of having Baldwin and Vargas challenge what we thought was going to be the status quo going to 2025 when the season began, was the hopes that Colson Montgomery and Brian Ramos would play at a high enough level to convince everyone to be comfortable with them being the starting left side of the infield in 2025. But just like how this season has played out, nothing has gone according to plan when it comes to that angle for next year.
Yeah, Brooks Baldwin is the insurgent candidate, and the timing of his call up was funny to me because it was around the time where everybody thought Yoan Moncada was coming back, and then all of a sudden he was pulled from his rehab stint, and it's still unclear where he is or what he is doing. But to me, it almost struck me in timing wise, like, all right, Yoan, time to come up. Like, I'm not really feeling it right now. Okay, we're going with Brooks Baldwin the rest of the year. Please block our phone number and go from there. I don't think it's that cold, but Baldwin, the timing of it after 8 games of AAA felt a little soon, but also like this guy's been doing what we want all year. We may as well go with him versus anybody else that's currently available right now. Take those at bats and innings. Like
60 seconds of Moncada. If he does not return to the White Sox this season, obviously that club option, already foregone conclusion, will be declined by the White Sox. What is he doing in free agency? He's got to be signing a 1-year deal, a proven
Tim Anderson deal,
$5 million. Like who in Major League Baseball trusts Yoan Moncada to play more than 80 games?
Unfortunately, I feel like I'm getting farther away from understanding Yoan Moncada, not closer, despite the years of effort toward it. So yeah, this would seem like an ultimate like cash in type of year. But the team says it's really kind of up on him as far as ramping back up again. They definitely thought and expressed that they thought he was ready to kind of ramp up and basically go to Charlotte pretty soon. And that's when things got shut down, and their frustration is palpable, or at least they're not really understanding what the pace this is taking. And now it's really he just got cleared by the Pedro Gafol said he was cleared by medical to ramp up his rehab again right before the road trip started, but that would basically be starting from zero and it'd be ACL action again, a little bit of baseball activities before that. I don't think there's no ACL, so I don't know, bridge league or something like that. Basically that he would have to start his whole rehab process again, that they were starting from zero, so to speak, in terms of game action. Maybe not quite zero compared to like when he hadn't been running since the abductor strain, but certainly nothing like, oh, maybe he'll be back by the end of when we get back from the road trip, or maybe he'll be on a rehab assignment. Nothing like that. Very much like, we'll see. It's up to him. He has to feel good. And it's especially like now getting into the second week of August, not knowing when his rehab is going to start. It's not something that's being stated openly, but it's certainly getting easy to see like, there's just not enough time left in the year to ramp him up. We're going to shut him down. And that's how his tenure ends.
What a crazy way to end. Eloy Jimenez gets traded to Baltimore. Tim Anderson is let go and then gets cut. Same thing with Jose Abreu. And Yoan Moncada gets hurt and doesn't come back.
And Liam Hendricks is throwing live BPs.
Hey, that's good. That's a good sign for Hendricks. And
with Abreu out there, I was thinking like if the losing streak carried on to like 27, 28 games, like what's the chances of signing him just for one more job?
that would have been funny. Well, back to on-field play. The White Sox will be coming home, so they have Thursday off. They have a Friday-Saturday series, and then Sunday they have the day off. And Friday and Saturday, they're facing the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs are 57-60. They're not quite dead yet. They're 8.5 games back of the Milwaukee Brewers, but they're 5.5 games back of the wild card, so they got some work to do. They won their last 2 games at home against the Minnesota Twins, so the Chicago Cubs had more wins against the Minnesota Twins than the Chicago White Sox did, even though the White Sox played the Twins 13 times. And in their last 10 games, the Cubs are 6-4. Your pitching probables for this series, the White Sox are going to see the best from the Cubs. Friday night, 7:10 p.m. Central Time, Jameson Taillon will be making the start for the Cubs against Garrett Crochet. We'll see how long Crochet lasts. Saturday night, this is a Fox national broadcast. Justin Steele will get the ball against Chris Flexen. A reminder, the White Sox have lost 16 straight games that Chris Flexen has pitched in, and opponents 7 straight games when Flexen has pitched have scored at least 6 runs. So against Justin Steele, the White Sox offense is going to have to be on its A game. Both games are considered sold out. So there's going to be a lot of fans at Guarantee Rate Field. A lot of Cubs fans are coming from the north side to partake in the tailgating and joining White Sox fans, and Cubs fans will try to make fun of White Sox fans, what they're seeing on the field, and whatever. White Sox fans know quite well what is going on. Nobody's delusional at this point of what's going to happen. But Jim, at Wrigley earlier this year, the White Sox had a 5-0 lead and a 5-1 lead that they blew both of those games. And the Cubs were the dramatic come from behind victories. What would the reaction be if like Friday night, Garrett Crochet just balls out and the White Sox win a game against the Cubs? Will that actually generate some excitement briefly on the South side?
I think there's probably like a little bit of, hey, we're happy to gum up the works of whatever is going on with the Cubs. Perhaps pressure on Jed Hoyer, I think maybe is what they're most focused on now, because the postseason, while still within reach because the National League is such a mess, maybe you can stomp out the embers of hope there, but otherwise it's a case of just, making it messy for the Cubs. I think that's probably the chief objective. So anything the White Sox do to that end is helpful, or at least a little bit of a balm that can last a couple days. But that's what I'm curious about. If it's just going to feel like Wrigley South because White Sox fans are checked out, Cubs fans are just there to put a mark on the stadium, or whether it's a case of just everybody uniting for sell the team chance, which could be a very possible thing.
Tickets are not cheap. They are not cheap for this game. To sit in Section 108 looking at third-party sites, it's going to cost you at least $90 a seat, which White Sox fans will look at that and say, why even bother? But Cubs fans are like, oh, this will be fun. Let's go visit Bridgeport for a night. To your question, Jim, will there be fights? There's always fights.
There's always fights. But I mean, like in terms of like as many, I should say.
Oh, yeah.
relative to a night game between the White Sox and Cubs at Guaranteed Rate Field.
Look to the left field bleachers.
Yeah.
Are we giving enough weight to the presence of national TV flexing, which I compare favorably to TNT Bulls or national TV Kirk Heinrich. The Apple TV broadcast of the Rays game in April, he threw 5 scoreless, which started their home sweep of the Rays. What was the other game? The previous crosstown game, which, maybe not national TV, but, had a lot of attention, packed house, was when he was dominating for 4 innings, then came back out for the rain delay. I wouldn't feel too confident if I had Chris Flexen under the bright lights facing me. That's when the silent assassin turns up a notch.
See, it's not Chris's fault, though, because Chris has pitched well. It's just all hell breaks loose when he leaves the game. That's the problem. I mean, except for whatever happened in Minneapolis, but against Kansas City, 6 innings, 2 runs allowed. But then in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, the Royals find a way to score 6 more times to win 8-5. He only gives up 3 against the Rangers, but the Rangers still score 10. 2 against the Pirates. Pirates still scored 6. Only 2 against the Twins. Twins still score 8. It's just the bullpen does Flexen no favors at all. And sometimes Flexen doesn't help himself. But okay, so you're saying Saturday night under the bright lights on Fox with AJ Brzezinski in the house, Chris Flexen is going to pitch a gem. Is that what you're saying, James?
I'm saying I'm like one more good, like randomly great start on national TV or in front of a packed house from thinking that Chris Flexen would be like one of the greatest postseason pitchers ever if he ever got to play on a postseason team.
Bob Nightingale is right. You have to trade for Chris Flexen.
And of course, we're still on Pedro Grifol watch. So we'll see if the White Sox do make any moves before Friday night, if they do have any news announced on Thursday.
Yeah, the Grifol thing, it's not the elephant in the room. I think it's the elephant everybody's tired of talking about. Like, yeah, there's an elephant there. We've been pointing it out for weeks now, and it's not going anywhere. Nobody's doing anything about it. So let's talk about something else. But one line jumped out to me when he was talking about Davis Martin, who had a very good start. And you're reading the end of a Scott Merkin story saying, he looks really good, man. He's a piece in this organization moving forward. And like anytime Grifol talks about like the organization moving forward, I wonder if there comes a point where just players know, yeah, we're going to outlast you. Like we don't have to listen to you because there are only 6 weeks of the season left. And yeah, at some point the White Sox might pull the plug and they're still going to need players. They don't need you, but they need me because I can play second base or I can, hit major league pitching with an 85 WRC plus, and the organization desperately needs that. Like that's what I'm dynamic I'm curious about when it comes to management and players like tuning out and just like this somehow becoming even worse as a lame duck situation.
So like, because the other side of that was when Martin got called up, he mentioned that Jersley gave him news, and like Martin's kind of had like a slow build through the Sox minor leagues. And he just kind of said like, yeah, Jersley's been like my manager for most of my professional career. And I realized like they've basically been following each other through the affiliates. So like that like probably represents like a more solid like level of continuity than, Pedro Grifol has been for him, who he really hasn't played under at any stretch of time and probably isn't going to play under like most of his career. So like Jersley is like probably the guy like, oh man, I need to maintain my relationship with him. More than like, the current major league, which is, tabula rasa all the time.
Well, this is a great way to pivot to our last topic for this podcast episode, because the Chicago Bears are on Hard Knocks, which is on HBO, and they just had the first episode. The big highlight is former Alabama coach Nick Saban is advising current Bears head coach Matt Eberflus, and it's a really good part of the episode, and it kind of like sets the stage of what the Bears are hoping for, because there's so much pressure and so much hype on rookie quarterback Caleb Williams. It could be really interesting TV this year, following and how the Chicago Bears are doing. Of course, it's going to be talk on Chicago radio, and Bears fans as the NFL season really ramps up here with preseason already in action and then kickoffs just a month away. But it got me thinking, obviously Hard Knocks has been around for a long time for the NFL. One, James, do you see like a similar show, like all access, cameras following an MLB team for an entire season like that? Like, would that format work for baseball? And what would a Hard Knocks show be like for this year's White Sox team?
Theoretically, we were going to give that the Red Sox at the end of this year because of the Netflix series.
Oh, I didn't know that. What are the Red Sox doing?
Yeah, Netflix has been following the Red Sox like all year.
Oh, interesting. So it's not
I
week
don't
by
think it's
week
been like
though.
just training camp like the way Hard Knocks is, but like they're supposed to be like a Netflix special about like their season.
Oh, awesome. I'll definitely have to
I
watch
remember
that.
because like I was when I was over there to like talking to like Lucas and Liam, like the Netflix people were following Liam's like throwing for the first time and stuff like that, and because that's just been a thing for them all year. It's funny because like Hard Knocks, NFL is like famously like pretty poor for like media access for like people like me, like the general beat writers, and like Hard Knocks is like this one, like when they do all access, they kind of like when they actually give like this level of access, they like make it a big like production thing, whereas like baseball is like anybody pretty much any can get a or not anybody obviously it's a big thing credential but like any local outlet can come and kind of get access to the clubhouse, talk to at least most organizations, talk to any like coach that they want or at least request like any executive they want. Quants tend to be off limits and random scouts are usually not trying to put their jobs on the line to like it's usually not something where it's like it takes like this big documentary for you to like ever hear the assistant GM talk, like it is in the NFL, where you're just not getting access to like so many decision makers in the organization. Whereas, we talk to like amateur scouting director, we talk to the player development director. It's a bit more of an open book where like maybe a big documentary wouldn't be as much of a stunning reveal of things we've never like had any kind of vision of what they look like before. But yeah, I think it would be interesting. And obviously we had the club back in 2010,
Yeah.
which was a lot more like a lot less raw documentary footage and more like let's chop this up to make it look like a show, like where there's the montage of Kenny Williams walking from his sports car from the parking lot into the building, and less like not as much like nitty gritty like daily goings on, which I feel like I haven't watched a ton of Hard Knocks. I'm not a huge NFL guy, but like I feel like you see a bit more like the mechanisms of how things work on a day-to-day basis through training camp as opposed to like here's this kind of quick video package that talks about how stressful it is to be the GM, which the club is a bit more stylized than maybe I think, Hard Knocks winds up being at times.
Yeah, the club was an MLB Network presentation, so it was very much we're not going to make the White Sox look bad at all doing this. And it was Kenny and Ozzy at the time, and like it should have been, good Hard Knocks material, but it just was, sanded down and smoothed out till like it was just marketing for a team that was not as good as they hoped it would be. And so it was kind of bland. Sergio Santos was featured in that. I think that was one of the scenes was like that's when he got told he was making the big league roster. And before that became a thing widely shared on Twitter. Like everybody expects the manager talking to a player and telling him that he's pack your bags, son, you're going to the big leagues. That was a little bit unique at the time. And now I think it's a more standard issue.
It's so standard issue that now like half those videos are like deceiving the player on why he's in the office for like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
It seems like this is too much like made into content and not just like a meeting.
Your mom's calling from the hospital. She has something to tell you.
I'm really looking forward to the Netflix documentary because the Red Sox season this year, I mean, it's still very interesting. They're right in the thick of the playoff hunt. So this could be like good material. Alex Cora signed his contract extension and not knowing if he was still going to be a free agent after this season. So they picked a good team for this Netflix special. But I guess moving forward, like if Netflix wanted to continue doing this and if teams were willing to be on board for an all access type of show like that, would the White Sox be a good fit?
I wish
don't know.
Tommy Pham, I think would be great.
True.
Just every time he enters the room, like the camera pans over to see if he's going to do anything.
Especially in Milwaukee, right? We're not going to take that.
Yeah. that was something. And any camera image that like caught like how like smoothly and slowly he walked away from like the scrum as we just like looked at each other like, is that it? And like, yeah, I think that's it. And I think we should be thankful that we're all walking out of here.
Yeah, none of your phones are against the wall in 3 pieces.
Yeah, I think Tommy Pham would have made an all access show interesting, at least from a White Sox perspective. They can also provide more insight.
Yeah, I think Pedro Grifol would have the producers thinking, we picked the wrong team.
Or the right team. If it generated a lot of conversation and even more inquiry, like what were the White Sox thinking? Why did they keep him for so long?
Yeah, I guess, but it'd just be like, if you got enough responses from the players saying like, I don't know what this guy's about, or like, yeah, we're just hanging out. You get them undercutting them, but it would just be like Pedro Grifol during the eclipse, I think would be a great scene. If they had just that
happened
confusion.
this year.
Yeah. Like they could do something with that, but otherwise, like his just anytime he's talking to the camera by himself, I forget what they call that in the office. Whenever the characters are talking to the camera, that it would just be so much unusable footage of just he's still talking.
The eclipse moment would be great for like one of those office like camera shots where like you see him poking his head out to look at the eclipse in the distance, and then there's like the sudden zoom in that like catches him like peeking at the eclipse and then like poking his head back in, so prepare for the game.
Oh yeah, that did happen this year. I forgot about that briefly.
I think about it a lot. Like that was the moment where just like this guy gives you nothing, like in terms of just he's performing for a role that he doesn't believe he can do or doesn't know how to do. He's like faking it till you make it, but terrible at faking it, like the worst possible faker. That was that moment.
Well, if he's still managing the White Sox, there'll be a lot more media, as you'll have Cubs media, and every TV outlet will be at Guarantee Rate Field. The radio stations will be there. Lots of people will be there. And of course, you have the Fox national broadcast on Saturday night. So again, you could read the recaps on SoxMachine.com. We'll have a new podcast episode for you guys on Monday. If Pedro Grifol is let go prior to the series, we'll do our best to have an emergency podcast to cover that news. But follow us on social media. We're at Sox Machine. James will be at the games for this upcoming homestand. You can follow him at JR Fegan. So if there's any breaking news, we'll have it ready to go for you guys on social media, especially on Twitter. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Apple and Spotify. You can also listen to the show or watch it on youtube.com/Sox Machine. If you enjoy our work and want full access to our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine, which thank you to all of our new Patreon folks that have signed up recently. We just had our Zoom call earlier this week with those that are part of the $25 tier and higher. That was really fun, like 90 minutes just chilling in a Zoom virtual meeting. Great questions from our Patreon supporters and topics just to talk about while watching the White Sox break the 21-game losing streak. So it was a lot of fun. And again, if you want full access, monthly plans start at $5, but we also have additional tiers of support that give you additional benefits. You can sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.